Mayowa, Lambe, and Roby Ekpo, two people whose marriage has now been pulled into the public square in a way that is messy, emotional, and layered. The story came in fragments. We have leaked chats, a lot of reactions, and then it escalated when Robbie sat on a popular podcast and told his side of the story, speaking about an 11-year marriage, right? I think so, that had clearly been on the strain for a long time. And he spoke, right? He broke down in tears, and that moment became the emotional center of the entire conversation. Now, from what has surfaced, there were already deep cracks in that marriage long before the public saw it, right? We leaked conversations suggesting frustration, emotional distance, and especially issues around intimacy. Okay, where Mayowa, the ex-wife, the former wife rather, I prefer that expression, she expressed dissatisfaction and spoke about feeling neglected, unheard, and even damaged in her self-worth within the relationship. And then you watch the podcast or hear about it, and then you see a man crying, right? From a human and cultural perspective, unfortunately, men are raised not to cry, especially not publicly. They're raised to hold it together, to suppress, to endure, right? So when a man sits in front of cameras and breaks down, it disrupts something inside of people. It pulls that emotion in a way that is almost automatic, right? You could see it online. The sympathy, the shift in the narrative, the willingness to hear him out, right? And which is right. And that reaction is human. It is expected because when someone shows pain, especially someone society has conditioned to hide pain, people respond, people soften, people lean in, okay? Now, we encourage men to cry at Shisha Wellness and Consultancy, just to put that out there. Emotion, whether from a man or a woman, can influence perception. And sometimes it can be used intentionally or unintentionally to gather sympathy, right? To shape a narrative, to make one side of a complex story feel more relatable than the other. And this is not new. I know that because women have been accused of this over centuries. And now you're seeing that men can also occupy that space. Okay? When you move past the tears and actually listen, you hear the substance of what was said. And one of the key issues that stood out was sexual compatibility, or rather the lack of it. Because Robbie, the husband, the former husband, openly admitted that his capacity for intimacy is limited to what he feels is enough for him, right? Saying in his own words that 2 times a week is sufficient and that he's not going to push himself beyond that. Okay? Now, that might be his truth, but the problem begins when a relationship becomes centered around one person's comfort. Intimacy in a committed relationship, right, is not supposed to be one-sided. It is supposed to be mutual. It is supposed to involve effort, compromise, and a genuine desire to meet your partner where they are. I dare say, especially in African societies, when a woman expresses a strong desire for sexual fulfillment, she is judged. She's labeled. She is reduced. And that alone creates a situation where her needs are either ignored or treated as excessive. And over time, that kind of imbalance does not stay in the bedroom. It spills into respect, into communication, right? Into the entire structure of the relationship. I must mention the issue of migration as well. Okay? Opportunity and the patterns we have seen over time where relationships become tied to relocation. to access to a better life outside of the country. Better life, right? This is not a new story to you who is listening. You've heard of it, you've seen it, and you have been close to travel spaces, to embassies or diaspora communities, right? You know exactly what this looks like. Where people enter marriages, not just for partnerships, but as a pathway to papers. Where agreements are made behind closed doors, where emotions are secondary, and documentation becomes the real goal. And over time, those arrangements begin to collapse because they will, under the weight of reality. Now, I say this with care. As much as we love our country, as much as we speak about growth and change, we also have to be honest about the things that are wrong. Because there is a pattern, especially amongst Nigerians, where some people will go to any length just to secure immigration status, where integrity becomes negotiable, where laws become obstacles to bypass, right? Where the question is no longer what is right, but what can work. This carries a cost that goes beyond the individuals involved because it shapes how we are perceived globally. It reinforces stereotypes. It weakens trust. And it places a strain, right, on those who are doing it the right way. If you haven't heard anything I have said, please hear this. At some point, you have to ask yourself a question. What are you willing to sacrifice just to leave? Just to belong somewhere else? Just to hold a document that gives you access? Because if the answer includes your integrity, your honesty, your values, then you have already lost something far more important than what you're chasing. Countries have laws, systems have structures, and while no system is perfect, you cannot keep approaching them with a mindset of deception and and expect respect in return. You cannot keep exporting the same behaviors you criticize at home and expect a different outcome abroad. Migrate if you must do it. Seek better if you can. Build a life wherever you find yourself, but do it in a way that you can stand by. Do it in a way that does not require you to constantly defend your choices. Do it in a way that allows you to look at yourself without shame.